All right, looks like we're good. I want to welcome you all to our Women in the STEM Fields event. I appreciate you all being here today. My name is Sarah Lindell. I'm the Assistant Director of Student Life here at the Front Range Larimer campus. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to some fantastic, actually 4 of them, fantastic panelists we have here to learn more about their experiences as women in their particular field. Participants will then have the opportunity to ask questions that they might have of our panelists, and we will actually wrap up this event with some information about a Front Range specific program called Wolves or Rams, which provides a scholarship opportunity, a pretty significant scholarship opportunity to students who are studying in the STEM fields if they're interested in transferring to Colorado State University. So a lot of great stuff going on here today. I want to introduce just briefly our panelists, and then I'm going to have them talk a little bit more about themselves. We have Andrea Richards, who's a Front Range Community College faculty member teaching a variety of EMS courses here on campus. We've got Vicki Eisel. She's also a Front Range faculty member teaching a variety of different computer science courses, and she's the program director for computer information systems. We have Brandis Martinez. She's a PhD student at the Colorado State University. And we also have Colleen Brent here with us, and she is also a PhD student at Colorado State. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our panelists. I'm going to have them, if they wouldn't mind, answer our first question. Can you tell us a little bit about your career path? So education, maybe where you're at right now. We'll go ahead and start with Andrea, if that's all right.
That's fine. I'm Andrea. I am the EMS program director on the Larimer campus. I got my first experience in healthcare in 2001. I was actually sitting in an EMT class on 9/11, and we went to the student center and watched the towers fall. Sorry. And that's when I decided I wanted to work in healthcare. That really was. I had done it because I have 4 boys and they were all little, and I thought, we're going to have broken bones and all kinds of things. So this was just my first aid class. And then I decided that this is really what I wanted to do. I worked for Weld County Paramedics, Weld County Paramedic Services on an ambulance crew out in Greeley for 10 years. I worked my way through nursing school doing that. I was an ER nurse at PVH in Fort Collins for 10 years. And then started teaching EMS at Front Range in 2012. Became program director a couple years ago.
Vicki, do you want to share next?
Sure. So I'm Vicki Eisley, and I started a little different path. I was after grad, I got a bachelor's in mathematics, and then I went into and I got a job teaching at in Cheyenne at the community college in mathematics. And I went to my program director and said, I want to do this full time. And he goes, well, you've got to get a master's degree at least, which I did not have. And he goes, but don't get it in mathematics, get it in computer science. Math teachers are a dime a dozen, but I can't hire computer science teachers. I said, okay. I love teaching, and I'd already taken some computer science classes and really enjoyed them. So I went and got my master's in computer science and just fell in love with it. It really struck a chord. So I spent 10 years as a lab manager, running a computer lab where students would come in to get help. It ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and would help students with anything from how to get WordPerfect to open to how to get their code to run or whatever it was that came in. We had 300 different applications we supported in that lab during that time period. And finally decided I wanted to go back into full-time teaching because I was still teaching part-time. And I'd worked I only worked for a year as a full-time programmer, but teaching was my love. So I came to CSU and worked on a PhD, but they hired me away at Front Range before that. So I started in 2001 as a teacher here at Front Range, and I've been teaching full-time. So my job, I have kept up with what is going on in the industry, but my love has always been, how do I get students to really understand what is happening at the beginning level of programming?
Awesome. Brandis?
Yeah, okay, so I my background is from the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs, and I have a bachelor's in biology and a bachelor's in chemistry from there. I wasn't sure that I wanted to pursue higher education until probably halfway through my senior year. And then that's when I started applying to graduate schools. I really was interested in the research going on in the chemistry department at CSU. And so that's where I currently am. My career goals are in industry rather than academia, so my emphasis is not on teaching right now, it's more on the research side.
Awesome, thank you. Colleen?
Yeah, hi, my name's Colleen Brents, and I am CSU Rams through and through. I started my undergrad undeclared. All I knew is that I liked science and working with people. And so I started working in a radiation biology cell lab where we did cell cultures and a lot of microscope work. At that same time, I found out about this program called Environmental Health. The full name is Environmental and Radiological Health Sciences, which is a mouthful. So it's EH, Environmental Health. And so I did that for my undergrad and a Spanish minor. While I liked working in the cell lab, it was a lot of microscope work. And then I decided that I actually wanted to work with some people on like a bigger scale. So then I found out, or I did a lot of anatomy and human health sciences. And so then I decided from the cell level I wanted to go bigger. And I found out about ergonomics, which is how the body interacts in the environment. There's like chairs and computer interface. A lot of people talk about home ergonomics now with COVID and everybody working from home. It's a lot more than that too, though. It's like manual materials handling and car design. I could go on about that. Anyways, so I switched from the radiation biology lab to the ergonomics lab just as I was finishing my undergrad, and that transitioned real smoothly into a master's program at CSU in environmental health with a specialization in ergonomics. And my research was using like a motion capture tool in the field, so measuring how workers move in the real world. In this specific instance, it was in a craft brewery. And so that research was really fun and interesting. And then I finished my master's, and my advisor's like, well, there's more work to do in this. So I stayed and still studying injuries in craft breweries, and I'm finishing up my PhD in that.
Cool.
And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Fantastic. Thank you. My second question for you all, what do you enjoy most about your current role? I guess we can go in the same order. Andrea, if you want to start us off.
Sure. In my current role, the thing I enjoy the most is educating the next wave of healthcare workers, because someday these are the people who are going to be taking care of me. So I want to make sure that they are good at what they do, that they are knowledgeable. I just recently finished a master's in emergency management and homeland security with an emphasis in bioterrorism. And it's been interesting to be the student while I am also the educator. It's made me a little more sympathetic, I think, to students and due dates, and that this online learning is in the world of COVID is very challenging. And I am hoping that I am rising to the occasion of educating online more.
Awesome. Thank you. Vicki?
What I like most, I'll tell you, I like least is teaching online. I really don't. It's not my favorite. I really like being with the students and connecting with them a lot more than I feel I can do with the online. But I still am putting my heart into it. I love it when a student gets it, when they suddenly say, "Oh, that's what you meant." Now I get it. That's that I call it the light bulb moment, and that's my favorite thing to happen. But I also like learning about what I can do to make it better. I spend a lot of that's my free time is spending on, what else could I do to make this easier for students to learn. and what helps students learn more concretely.
Great, thank you. Brandis?
Yeah, so my favorite part is one, the flexibility that I have with my research advisor. Pretty much, he gives me an expectation of how much he expects me to work and what goals that I have set for, like, say, the semester, and then I can basically work at my own pace to get there as long as I'm reaching different goals along the way. So I really like that flexibility, and I also like how I was able to combine my undergraduate experience of chemistry and biology into my current research project, which is exploring the chemical environment that is involved with live tissue in a 3D printed like capsule. So I like the interdisciplinary work as well as the flexibility.
That's awesome, thank you. Colleen?
Yeah, just to echo what Brandeis said, yeah, the flexibility of grad school. I've been real fortunate. Yeah, my advisor doesn't mind when I work or where I work as long as it gets done and we communicate. Also, the interdisciplinary working with different academics and different disciplines, and also my field is real multidisciplinary and a lot of community partner and small business engagement. I think that's one of my favorite things about my experience so far is just the opportunity to engage with so many different kinds of people, if it's workers handling kegs or delivering beer or insurance providers and small business owners. I've also been really fortunate to be able to share my research at different institutions around the world. And that's been a really valuable, fun, cool experience.
Fantastic. My third question, what are some of the challenges you feel you've experienced in your field being a woman?
Are we starting with me again?
Sure.
Are we staying in this order? Okay. When I was hired by Weld County Paramedic Services, I was one of about 6 or 7 women in a service of about 50 employees. It's a very pre-hospital, fire, ambulance, and PD are very much a male-dominated industry. And it was very challenging. Some labeled me as incapable, surely because I had long hair and was a female. I was labeled as aggressive when they wouldn't listen to my input or my thoughts, and I tried to express them again. I was labeled as aggressive. Moody. And let's be really honest, in that high of a male-driven society or workforce, I was hit on a lot and called all kinds of really not nice names when I rebuffed those advances. That right, I should be happy to be hit on in my work environment, and that was really challenging for me. Not being taken seriously just because I was a woman, that my skills were subpar or my knowledge, my abilities, solely because I was female.
Vicki?
Yeah, so I've been a little luckier. So computer science is actually as bad, if not worse, as far as women in the workplace. So when I started grad school in 1982, it was the year we had the most number of women ever in grad school across the nation. I think there were 5 of us in a class of 50. There only 2 of us graduated. Everyone else dropped. So it was, but I'd grown up with 3 brothers, and I think that helped a little bit with just kind of ignoring what people around me said. But I do remember one day when I was working, and it was a day when I had been crawling around the floor and knew I'd be working with cables and doing all sorts of stuff with computer hardware. So I had dressed more appropriately, wearing blue jeans that day. And normally at that place, I was in Washington, D.C., where, everyone wore a suit. I always usually did, but that day I had not. And I'm directing two guys to do some stuff. And I said, you need to do this, you need to do that. And a student walked in and said, well, some women think they're in charge around here. And it was great when the two guys pulled their heads out and said, she is. And he just kind of went, and walked out. But that's the strongest thing I remembered as being really where the guy just assumed that there was no way I could do it. I guess I was taught from a little age. And then when I got into grad school at CSU, for some reason, I became the mother. I was a lot older than everybody else at that point. So I was the mother of everybody, and I didn't get hit on, which was kind of nice, because they were all much younger than me at that point. So I've enjoyed my experience. I've not had much trouble, but it's been very male dominated. I remember the first female in my class. That was 3 years after I started teaching. It was my first female. So it's very
I'm interested to hear the two at CSU's comments. I finished my master's, this master's over the summer, and through Arizona State University. And I was one of usually 2 or 3 out of a class of about 75 that was female still. So I'm curious to hear what your experiences are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the chemistry department, I think the women to men ratio is roughly 50-50. I think men still dominate women just a hair. So that being said, I haven't felt much of pressure because of being a woman. Most of it would come in the form of microaggressions, so comments that people say that they don't realize are harmful or could be hurtful. So I've been told by peers mostly that like mentioned that, oh, you got the scholarship because you're a woman or because you're a minority. And they mean it in a joking manner, but they don't realize that it's a hurtful statement. So that's the main impact that I've seen as a woman in my field.
So as far as my experiences in undergrad and my graduate program, it was more health sciences and a public health field, which actually has more women in it now. So a lot of my classes, sometimes there are only a few guys. But then with my experience in industry, typically the safety field or ergonomics and biomechanics, there are a lot more men in those positions. There is a shift we're starting to see. And I'm part of the Women in Safety Engineering, which is a group of professional women in that industry. And they're pretty active in social media and working together and figuring out ways to deal with if there's harassment issues or that kind of thing. I've been really fortunate to not experience too much aggressions. One thing that does come to mind, though, I've noticed through graduate school is it seems sometimes like there's different expectations. Like the women still have to, everything I have to do has to be perfect, or I have to try that much more. And I still see that now, which is interesting. So yeah, I guess that kind of answers the question.
All right, thank you. So my fourth question, what is it about being a woman do you feel has helped you be successful in your field? So I know sometimes folks can talk about maybe a minoritized or marginalized identity as if the identity itself, so being a woman, that could create a barrier to success. And we know that that's not true. But what do you feel just being you has made you be so successful? We'll start with Andrea again.
I think given my age, I hate to say it, I'm getting older, but I have been the patient. I have been the parent of a patient. And over the last decade, I lost both my mom and my dad. And so I have been the child of an elderly patient. It's amazing to me still how many doctors and care providers would talk down to me because I was female, not recognizing my knowledge base and my experiences. And that made me kind of sad. When I was my father's medical power of attorney, so when he was unable to make decisions late in his life, in the weeks up to his death, I made those medical decisions for him. And I will never forget one cardiologist asking me if I would like to talk to my husband about it. Would I like to make these decisions, having a conversation with basically a man?
Oh,
However, my oncologist, I am a breast cancer survivor, and my oncologist is a young female, and I adore her.
so Vicky?
So I know that there's been some, when I got to grad school, the chances of getting a scholarship was greater because I was a woman, because they wanted more women in the field. So I know that kind of helped. I hope I would have earned it on my own anyway, but I know that was an extra checkbox that I got when I got to grad school. I worked my tail off, so I'm sure that they didn't regret that I got that. They gave it to me, but I'm sure that did help with that. Otherwise, I don't think so. I grew up in a family where my parents had very much "you could do anything" type attitude, even in the 60s, when that really wasn't the attitude at most places. I was extremely fortunate in that I go back, I'm the 5th generation where both parents have a college degree. So you go back to the 1800s where even the men and the women have a college degree. So I think I grew up with a whole different mindset than most people. And I think you kind of project that a little bit, it's like I never dreamt that I didn't belong. Or no one ever had ever told me I didn't belong, so I never thought that they would ever think that. So they maybe even thought it and did things that I just didn't even faze me. I ignored it. So I don't know. So I don't know how it really affected me otherwise. I think my upbringing was much more of my impact than anything else.
Awesome, thank you. Brandis?
Yeah, so I think my answer is kind of similar to what Colleen said on the last question. But I think that being a woman has made me like work harder than some of my male peers, because I feel like I have to prove myself more. And I think that's more of a subconscious feeling than anything that I actually like actively think about as I'm like going through, my undergraduate and now graduate school. But it's definitely there, and I feel like I push myself more.
Colleen?
As far as being a woman, one thing Andrea said about the cardiologist wanting to talk to your husband, that reminded me of, I was registering for a conference with the University of Utah, and you put your name and then it has title that you had to select, and it was Mr., Dr., or Mrs. I was like, oh, and I think I put Mr. And then the next year, though, they did have Miss in addition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remembered that instance. And then get to echo what Victoria said. I was really fortunate to grow up. My mom read lots of parenting books, and it was a real like can-do attitude. Like you can do whatever you want, and just go there and be there. Also, before college, I taught and coached rock climbing and like lots of groups of kids. So I think that really helped boost my like confidence, just like walking into a room and talking to people. Um, and in my field, in ergonomics and safety, I'll like go up and talk to a bunch of different groups of people. And maybe being a woman makes me more approachable, or just that being enthusiastic, I think has been my biggest help.
Awesome, thank you. My next question, could you tell us about a time when another woman in your field was an advocate or a mentor for you?
So working on the ambulance, I did not have any female mentors or role models. With there being so few of us, and I was the newbie, and it was pretty aggressive and kind of a cutthroat industry. when I became a new grad nurse, I actually had two fantastic mentors who took me under their wing, taught me how to not only be a nurse, but how to stand up for myself with the male doctors who tended to, a couple of them, not all, but a couple of them tended to talk down to women, even though the majority of nurses are women, right? But they really helped me learn how to be a self-advocate and say, you know, at the appropriate time and place, not in front of a patient, but back in a room, you know, off the doctor's office or lounge or whatever, and say, hey, you can't talk to me like that in front of patients. It's demeaning and belittling, and I won't tolerate it.
Good for you. Trying to think of the best way to say it. Repeat the question. Let me start that.
Sure. Can you tell us about a time when another woman in your field was an advocate or a mentor?
Okay, so when I was in grad school for my master's degree, so I'm in Washington D.C., there was another teacher who I never had as a class, but I worked in the lab. I helped students, you know, there's a TA that worked in the lab and worked on things. And I noticed this one teacher's students tend to do better than anybody else. And I went up to her and said, I want to learn how to teach like you teach because I want to be as good as you are. And she let me sit in her classes. She gave me all kinds of hints and tips and all kinds of things. And we're still in contact today. It's been really, yeah, she definitely made a real big difference in my life as far as that went.
Fantastic. Brandis?
Yeah, so for me, it was at my undergraduate institution where one of my lab instructors actually advocated for me to get an undergraduate award from the American Chemical Society. So I always remember her, like I thanked her in person and, you know, sent her a thank you letter. And I always remember her telling me, I hope this gets you to where you want to be. And so that was like her way of helping me out in a more like physical way. And but she was also a pretty big mentor. I remember having conversations with her of like, should I go to graduate school? What can I do if I don't go to graduate school? And talking about my options like that. So she was a big influence on me.
Awesome. Thank you. Aline?
As far as women mentors and advocates, so there's this one lady I've been working. She's actually outside of my department, but she runs the CSU Rights program at CSU. Dr. Christina Quinn, and she's fantastic. At the end of my master's and during my PhD studies, I really struggled with my advisor on writing and written communication. Like he wanted it one way, but the way he was describing what he wanted wasn't clicking with me. So I reached out to her, and so she also has a PhD, but it's in rhetoric and science and writing and communications. But we work together, and she's been a great resource. And yeah, learning how to communicate and how to advocate for myself. And if I'll like tell her about like there's this thing that's happening in my lab and it feels kind of weird, and she's like, yeah, that's weird. Here's what you could do. Or, here's what I would do. So not in my department, but in my network. So I had to go outside of my network to find support.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm going to kind of jump off our scripted questions just for a second, because you just described so many different connections that you had. How did you all, and we can start with Andrea again, how did you approach that person who was your advocate or mentor? How did that come about? How did that relationship come about?
For me, one of the nurses was assigned. I was a new grad nurse, meaning the first 6 months after I graduated from nursing school, and they pair you with nurses. So you have somebody to go to and ask questions of. Who I did not list as a mentor was actually currently my boss, the Health Sciences and Wellness Department chair on the Larimer campus. Her name's Anne Marie. She is fantastic, and she is so supportive and so encouraging. And even before she became my boss, we actually shared an office when we were both hired in 2012, and we just bounced ideas off of each other. We just kind of figured that we needed to support each other and encourage each other in the environment. And she's phenomenal.
That's great. Becky?
So as I said, I had went up to the person and said, hey, you know, I want to teach like you do. Can you help me? And that's how I got that started. But I've had other people that I considered mentors, and usually I'm willing just to go up and say, you know, whatever feature I think that's really that they do well, and say I want to do that also. It makes them feel good, and then they're usually more than willing to help you with anything. You know, you say, I think you're really good at blah blah blah. Well, you know, I remember I had another teacher when I was at CSU, and I said, you know, I really liked how you know, I liked how you organize your code, is what it was. You know, she was showing us code. Can you give me some hints on how you go about starting that? And you know, that kind of stuff just helps a lot. Don't be afraid to ask.
Great. Brandis?
Yeah, so for me, since my mentor was actually my lab instructor, it was pretty natural for me to just like start out asking her more questions, asking her lab questions, and then we would just, you know, in the lab when we were waiting for some experiment to run, we would just talk about other things, talk about our future goals, our plans, and that sort of thing. So it just kind of continued from there. And then whenever I seen her around campus, because it was a pretty small campus, we would just, you know, talk to each other for a little bit, or I'd stop by her office if I needed anything like urgent. And so she was really approachable. So I think that's how it went from more of just a teacher-student relationship to more of a mentor-mentee relationship as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Colleen?
The initial way I reached out to my mentor, I had a friend that worked with her. So I was like, hey, I know so and so. They recommended. I'm trying to work on my writing. They recommend I reach out to you. Here's where I met. Can you help me? And she's like, yeah, sure, of course. And then we met a couple times, and since then I've tried to like reciprocate or help out by volunteering and helping out with the program that she runs, and attending the seminars she hosts and stuff. So in exchange for her like doing the coaching me and stuff, and then I've helped out where I can and when I can for her. Yeah.
That's great. I just know that these relationships sound so powerful and inspiring. I want to make sure that students who may be going on that path, they kind of figure out and hear some of the different ways that you created those awesome connections. So thank you for that.
And Sarah, can I make one more comment? I know this is about women in STEM, but I would have to say probably one of my strongest mentors was actually a male, and he was my EMT instructor. His name was Mike, and all through my experiences on the ambulance, I would call him and say, I don't even know how to approach this situation, or how do I deal with this male coworker? And he had some very interesting insights as a man in how I could approach that. So my recommendation is don't limit your mentors and your advocates to females, although they are often a very strong resource for you. But there are some really good men out there too.
Thank you. That's an excellent point. Thank you. Yes. My next question, could you tell me about a time that you've served as an advocate or a mentor for another person, another woman in your field, maybe?
So I actually, when I was in my EMT class, I made a friend in the class, and she was 17. She was not actually old enough to get her EMT. So she went off to college. She got a bachelor's degree, and then came back and did the EMT class again. At that time, I was a lab instructor, and so I would help with some of the skills and stuff. She was then hired by Weld County Paramedic Services, the same agency I had worked for. And she would come to me and ask, so what about this? And I've had this interaction, and I knew the people because I for a short time, we were both employed there. And then I went on and did different things, but I really felt happy to be able to pay it forward and be able to mentor somebody in a way at that particular job that I had not been mentored. And I still try to keep well, we still have lunch regularly. But I've tried over the years of teaching to try to be a mentor to any of my students, but especially the women with such a male dominated industry that they really need that support. And I get phone calls and emails and, hey, do you have a minute that we can meet and talk? And I ran into this, and what do you think of that? And it's all based on my personal experiences, but I am really trying to pay it forward.
I agree the same thing. I just, since I have so many more males and females in the class, if I were to only mentor the females, that would be kind of weird and unusual. And I'm the only full-time teacher in computer science, so that would be not fair to the guys. So, but there's one student, and I bring this up as a point whenever I'm talking to students. There's one student that struggled terribly in his first few semesters. It did not come easy to him. And then one day we'd been sitting and slowly working through a problem. He got it, he understood it, and things like that. He got up and danced around the room. He was so excited. And the next day he asked me, he goes, do you think I'll be able to make this as a computer scientist? I said, did you dance around the room because, hey, it's over, I got it done, and I don't have to deal with it anymore? Or, hey, look at what I created? Because in computer science, you are creating something. And he goes, oh, I created it. It was so cool. I made it work. It was so cool. I go, you can make it as a computer scientist because that's the attitude you need. You need to have the joy of getting it accomplished. And I actually had him come back and ask me questions through his master's degree and things like that. He came back and he'd say, hey, how are you doing? Can I have a question here? I have no problem with, just I want people to succeed so much. And I hope the students feel that a lot of them do come and just, I've made a lot of, I consider them friends, but I know it's a mentor type situation.
Awesome. Thanks, Vicki. Brandis?
Yeah, so for me, it's been through being a TA, where I kind of help all of my students who have questions, but there's a few women in particular who, like last semester, for example, I was teaching a lab that was for chemistry majors. And so, this is like first or second year, so freshman or sophomore chemistry majors. And one of them was kind of having a hard time in her classes and was like, do I continue in chemistry? Like what do I do with chemistry? Like, having a hard time and I don't understand this. And so we talked it out and I gave her like some options. I talked to her about like what I did when I was struggling and what I am continuing to do now. And I told her, you're young, and if you want to change your mind, if you want to go down some different path, that's fine. So that's how I mentored that particular woman. And then there was, a few others. One asked for a letter of recommendation because she was getting a job as a tutor. And so just various little things like that, just being there for my students.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Aline?
As far as mentoring opportunities go, I remember there was a handful of times when I guest lectured to new graduate students or undergraduates about my program and what I do. And I remember a couple students reach out to me afterwards to learn more, and some of them were women. I talked to them. And then more concrete or specific examples of mentorship I can think of is my office mate is for a long time she was the other woman in my program. But there was only like 3 or 4 of us, so it wasn't a majority or minority or anything. It's just a small group. But she was a lot more shy and introvert than I was. So I remember we would talk through challenges together. And it's funny, I look at her and see her like computer programming skills, and I'm like, whoa. And she looks at me and sees like my conference and like talking to groups and goes, whoa. So we complement each other well. And then this year, there's 3 new graduate students in my program. And so I've been kind of like the brand grad student to come and check in with them.
Fun position to be in.
That's fantastic. All right, my last question for you all. Do you have any general advice or maybe things that you wish you had known as you began your career in the STEM type field?
My recommendation is learn how to stand up for yourself. You don't have to be a bully. You don't have to be aggressive, but learn to say, that's not what I said. That's not what I meant. Any of those kinds of things. And along with that is, do I dare say it? Learn to say no. I think as women, we tend to, somebody asks us something and we are nurturers by nature, and we want to help in any way that we can. And I think it's very easy for us to take on more than we can comfortably do. And then it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy of, we didn't do it well because we were pulled in so many different directions. So stand up for yourself and learn to say no when it's not something that you need to do or that you have any interest in doing.
All right, Vicki?
I'd say don't be afraid to ask questions. So many students, and I think females tend to be more than males, they don't want to look stupid. They don't want people to think, they don't want to be that stereotypical person that doesn't understand. And they don't even ask the question to start with. And man, in our field especially, it's so critical. I actually talked to a guy the other day, and they were ready to fire. They were going to fire somebody, and it wasn't because he wasn't doing a great job, but more importantly, he wasn't willing to ask questions when he didn't understand. He would just kind of try to do what he thought they meant and never get it clarified. And they couldn't afford him. They couldn't afford somebody that wasn't willing to ask the questions and get exactly what they need to be done. So yeah, ask questions.
I would second that. In my classes, it's about 75% male, 25% female, and I would bet that 90% of the questions are asked by the men, the male students.
All right. Brandis, do you have any advice?
Yeah, so I think mine is more of like, I guess, specific, but if you're thinking about going to graduate school, see if you can do any undergraduate research. But at the same time, it's not critical that you do so. I didn't know anything about undergraduate research, even though my institution had it. So I came into graduate school with basically 0 research experience, and I don't think that my education so far has suffered. I've had to play a little bit of catch up, getting up to speed and thinking like a research scientist. But don't feel like you need to be an expert or you need to have certain skills to do research. So you can start early, but if that doesn't work for you, that's okay. You can start when you can. So I guess don't put pressure on yourself if you feel like you're not where you need to be, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Colleen?
Everyone already said so many great things. Yeah, I think that learning to say no, I've definitely, that would have helped me earlier on.
Me too.
Yeah, I took on a lot of projects and then, yeah. And then that undergrad research, I was fortunate to be involved, but yeah, some of the new incoming students, they don't have that. So I really like Brande's start when you can, don't feel that pressure. And then asking questions, don't be afraid to reach out. The worst they can do is say no, and then you just move on. So just if you have questions, ask, reach out to people. I've gotten real good at LinkedIn cold calls lately, just reaching out to people like, hey, I'm interested in this. I see you're involved in this. I would like to connect with you. And it works. And then also another thing that's been really helpful for me in graduate school is statistics and some sort of statistical software programming. So I use R, there's also SAS, there's a bunch of programs out there, but just don't be afraid. Statistics can be a scary word, but it's not that bad. And again, just ask questions and people want to help and don't be afraid. It sounds real complicated at first, but yeah, ask questions, don't be afraid, and you can do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We will move on to the question and answer part of our program. I've done a lot of talking, so I would love to open it up to any of the students that have any questions for these fine folks. Feel free to just unmute yourself and ask your question.
I have a question.
Go for it.
So I made a little mini list while you guys were talking. So
Good.
I'll just start with the first one. Andrea, I used to work in the medical field. I know exactly where you're coming from. I just want to tell you that it was rough. But
What did you do?
I was in nursing school, and I worked in the ER for 4 years at a critical access ER. So the nearest hospital for any trauma was over 2 hours away. So I had to take on many roles that I was not trained to do. And I worked at nighttime with lots and lots of men, and I felt sexualized and ran over and abused a lot. And that's actually what pushed me away from medical field. I decided I could not do it anymore. It wasn't good for my mental health, and I decided a different area of science was better for me.
I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad you figured out what would work for you. What would make you healthy and strong.
Yes, it was a wonderful experience. I took so much from that experience, and it's helped me grow as a person. And I still hold so much respect for people that do those jobs, because it's so hard, especially when you're working in an ER and you don't really know who's going to die that day, and then you have to rush, and you have to stay calm through the whole thing, even though you're standing there and you know maybe this is going to happen. So it's very emotionally straining, and so much respect, especially to you as being an EMT. Like, you see so much, and me as my mental capabilities, I can't do that. I've learned, but still, so much respect for that. My question was, like, have you ever felt rejected from a position or a promotion because of your gender? Like, because in the few fields I've been in, it feels like they always hop over me because, like, my name is Ashley or I'm a girl, and like men don't listen to me, and I have to sit there and get more aggressive until somebody will listen to me.
Yeah, trying to take a supervisory role over men in a male-dominated industry is challenging. Yes, I was passed over twice for a promotion in favor of men. Not better skills, but men.
How do you like handle that rejection? Like, do you just keep pushing? Like,
so I went home and cried. Let's be really honest here. I didn't cry there, but I went home and I cried. And then I started taking stock in what I wanted to do. And actually that the second time is when I started thinking that maybe I have always loved to teach. I've always loved to be a part of the skills labs that they do and the practice. And that is when I started thinking that maybe I really wanted to teach full time instead of being a charge nurse or in a supervisory role. So I tried to find, like you did, what was best for me. Not just easy, because teaching is not easy.
mm-hmm.
It's really time consuming, and especially online. It's trying to make it meaningful. Just because you post something online doesn't mean it's a meaningful educational tool. But find what you have a passion for, what you love, and that will shine through, and gender becomes less important. At least I have found. In when your love of something shows through, you just excel at it.
That was super helpful. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. If anyone else has like any input on that or experience, I would love to hear your experience with that.
I was lucky in the sense that I loved my job, and when I looked at going up and being more of a manager, I didn't want it. I've been asked to be a department chair and things like that, and I'm like, no, I don't need. They asked me to apply. I'm not saying I would have gotten it, but I'm like, no, I don't. I'm at my spot. So so I've had two major careers in both places. I felt like I was at my spot, and I looked at the positions above me and did not want to be there. Pay would have been nice, but it was not what I wanted to be. So
the pay hardly ever reflects the amount of stress, the increased stress and workload.
I'm sure.
At least that's what I found.
Any other questions?
Ashley said she had a bunch, so go ahead.
So my second question was, I have like perfection overload, and it sounds like a lot of women have that stress for perfection, that they have to do everything to perfection for it to be acceptable. And like, I wanted to get ideas on how to handle that stress, because like, even when I have almost straight 100s in all my classes, I still don't feel like I'm reaching the goals. Like, I always feel like it's never enough. Even though I'm only a freshman and I've already done research and I've done a second research and like identifications and stuff. Like, how do you handle that perfectionism?
So I'm kind of the same way when it comes to my classwork. I was the same way in undergrad. And I made it a point to take a break. So I made that compromise with myself, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to grind and go like 100% during the school week, or for example, then that's what I would do. But then I would say after 9 p.m. or set a certain time limit, like after that time, that is relaxing time, that is like personal time where I go outside, I do something other than thinking about the academic life. And so like now in graduate school, I definitely do the same. There has been points where I'm getting close to a deadline and I'm still working on a paper, and I'm like, I know there's different ways I can fix this, I can make this better. And then I talk to my advisor, and he's like, this is fine. You don't make any more changes. You're just going to end up making it worse. This is fine. Just submit it and be done with it. And so I also rely on my advisor for that moderation as well. So I'd say rely on your mentors, and then don't forget to take breaks.
I would agree. There was a class that I took in spring semester in my master's, and I got a 99%. And I was like livid. How could I have missed that 1% in those points? I mean, it was ridiculous. My sister actually talked me off the ledge. But what I found, and what we decided, my sister and I, in talking, was that I would set these goals. This is the bare minimum, right? This is what must be done to meet the requirements of the class or whatever. What else would I like to add on top of that? And then start weighing the pros and cons of that time involvement. Right. Like she was mentioning earlier, that you have to take self-care time. My boss and mentor tells me, I got an email from you on Sunday afternoon. What were you doing working? Right? And she calls me on it. So prioritize and set those goals and objectives, and know what can give and what can't. What are you willing to compromise on, and what are you not?
I wish every student would get a B their first semester, because you get rid of that 4.0. You once you've lost it, you can't get it back. and you don't need to worry about keeping it anymore. Life is just too short to worry about every single point. Learn what's important and say, I really, it took me a while, but there's things there's just not that important sometimes. You need to make sure you know you want to be good. I want to be in the top 10%, but I don't think I need to be the top 2. It took me a while, but it just so much more better life balance if you just say, okay, I'm pretty good. This is good. I'm better than most people. And that's going to be good enough. And I'm going to go do and have something to reward yourself with. I'm going to go watch my favorite TV show. I'm going to go take a walk with the dog or whatever it is.
Ice
But
cream.
make sure you plan it.
Colleen, did you have any advice on that one?
Yeah, I would just adding that self-care, making sure to take breaks, and after a while, yes, you work on something, you stare at something for so long, and it's just like you need a fresh perspective. And then also knowing, I don't want to say good enough, but like knowing what your advisor really prioritizes or what your advisor is looking for, or what they care about. Focusing on that. And then another thing I've recently realized is, it's like I'll be working on a project and it's like there's so many ways I could go about this. And I talked to my advisor and he's like, there's no wrong way. You just have to pick one and then just be able to support it and like defend why you did it this way. So what really would have helped me earlier on is like there's not, depending on what you're doing, of course, there's not one perfect right way. You just have to be able to justify and explain why you did it that way, and so like pick a path and go instead of like but also I know CSU has a really good mental health facility with counselors and psychiatrists, and that's been a really helpful resource for me personally.
Front Range does as well.
Yep.
With their counselors on campus. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Rosalie, I don't want you to think I didn't see your hand, so go ahead and ask your question there.
I have a question about the undergraduate research, because I know, Colleen, that you mentioned that you took part in undergraduate research. So I was just wondering, like, how would an undergraduate get into that kind of position and be able to do that kind of stuff?
Great lead in for Erin.
A couple ways. I remember I did 2 approaches. I went on the department website and looked up all the different faculty and what their read about their bios and what their research was, and then sent out a bunch of random emails. It's like, hi, I'm new. I'm so and so. I'm interested in this. I see you do research in this. It's like, are there any volunteer or internship or undergrad research opportunities, or could you talk to me, or do you know anybody who is looking? And then also I joined, it was the Environmental Health Student Association, but I got to meet other students in my program, and one of them worked in a research lab that had an open position, or not an open position, an opportunity for involvement. So that's how I got involved in the radiation cell biology lab. And I was there for like 3.5 years, which I was really lucky to do that. But yeah, just talking to people, sending out emails. The professors or whoever runs the lab, they love to chat and talk about their work. So yeah, I encourage you to reach out to them too.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. Any other questions out there? Erin, I don't want to go too far over our time for you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Ashley. Oh, you're muted.
I have one more. So I am a first-generation high school graduate and a first-generation college student, and thank you. So I don't have like any of these like family situations where anyone is leading me. I've never had any like mentor from a woman telling me what direction to go in or how to do things, because they were always gender rolled very tightly in the South. And women had to cook and clean. You don't need to learn anything else. But so my question was anyone else in here even like a first generation college student or first generation high school graduate?
There's gonna be a lot of them.
Yeah, I'm the
Okay.
first in my family to go to anything beyond like a college education. So nobody else in my family has a PhD. So when I was like looking at that, my parents were no help. They were supportive. They're like, "You go, but we don't know what this means or what you're doing." And so there's that. And neither of my parents like actually did degree. They have some college, but they didn't finish or do what they wanted to do with it. So I mean, that's where my background is. So you can absolutely do it.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to share on that one? That
I was going to say,
question?
actually, if you have questions, I am more than willing to help you. I'm sure all of us are. Just, as I said, reach out for questions, and your advisors also. You meet and just say, I don't even know what to do next, and we'll help you. We'll help you. People will help you through it. I mean, I had it with my parents, but what is it? 30 or 40% of the students here are in your boat. You're not alone. And so we're used to, that we love to help people change their lives.
So my
Thanks.
email is andrea.richards@frontrange.edu. Sarah, give her my email.
Oh God.
I can do that.
Thank you.
You
Yeah,
are
what can
welcome to email me. You're not in healthcare anymore, but I'm happy to try to encourage and support you in any way that I can.
Thank you, because where I'm going is still male dominated, so I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, and
Actually, just
Resource
put
too.
your email
Sarah,
in
feel
the
free to
chat
send
there.
out my email. I'm
Oh,
Colleen
fantastic.
Brents, COLLEEN.BRENTS@gmail.com. Or I think Sarah might have another email. I check both emails. Or reach out to me on LinkedIn. But yeah, I grew up with both my parents went to college, but there's people in my program that are in more similar situations. But yeah, anywhere I can help.
Fantastic. I got those email addresses there in the chat.
Yep.
If that's helpful. All right. Any other questions? Thoughts? Because if not, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Erin, and she has some fantastic information for you about a program called Wolves to Rams.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's so cool to see all of you. I'm also a first generation high school graduate and a first generation college graduate, first generation master's graduate, thinking about applying to a PhD, and I survived Mississippi. So there's that.
You know my
I'm
pain.
here, I'm here to talk about Wolves to Rams. So some of you may have received an email regarding Wolves to Rams. It's a program to help students transfer from Front Range to CSU in the sciences, right? In STEM. So that includes biomedical, includes behavioral, like psychology, it includes mathematics, engineering, data science, data analytics, computer science, right? All of the STEM fields, also including natural resources. So the cool thing is we have both a scholarship that's open right now. It's a $30,000 scholarship, starts at Front Range, goes to CSU. So please, please, please take a look at that. And we also have paid undergraduate research internships. So you heard all of the scientists here today talking about undergraduate research. We hook you up. So right now we're looking for 30 students for the scholarship and 6 students for the paid research internship. And so where can you find information? Well, A, check your Front Range email because you probably got something. Or B, I'm going to share my screen if that's possible, Sarah.
I'm hoping so. I think so.
Wow. Nice. Go to b2b.colostate.edu. And on this page, you will find all kinds of information about the scholarship that we're talking about. That's provided by the National Science Foundation. The paid research internship is being funded by the National Institutes of Health. This one focuses primarily on biomedical and behavioral sciences. The cool thing is there's just one application. So if you're not sure which one you want to apply for both, and we'll help you figure it out. As I said, we're selecting 36 students. As of right now, we've had about 90 apply. So your chances are very good at being selected. One of the main things that we're looking for is your response to your essay questions. And this application is due October 14th. So again, the website b2b.colostate.edu, and it has information about eligibility, the actual application itself. You can log in and out of that. We're also having live Q&A and application assistance. So we have some Zoom appointments set up. So if you want to pop in and ask questions, or you want to work on your application during that time, the cool thing is you can have the application open in one tab, and then you can have us on Zoom in the other and go back and forth and say, hey, in the application it says, you know, so-and-so about this semester, what should I put? So cool. Lots of great resources here. I guess I should have mentioned, so I said the scholarship is $30,000 over the course of 7 semesters between Front Range and CSU. And the paid research internship is $40,000 over 24 months. So some pretty amazing resources, and this is only open to Front Range students. We are especially encouraging women to apply. And they are a focus, women are in STEM are a focus of both the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health. So we really, really want more women to apply, and we can help them find mentors, help them find research labs, help fund their school so that they can go to school full time and get that degree and hopefully go on to graduate or PhD or medical school or whatever's next. Questions?
Yeah, I have a quick one. I know it lists all the qualifications. Is there anything specific that's not listed that you're looking for? Like, are we more likely to get it because we're women, or are we more likely to get it because we like, you know, our essay questions went in a specific direction? Are you guys looking for something more?
Yeah, good question. So definitely the cool thing is that the people who will be reviewing the applications, they're only going to receive the responses to the essay questions. So based on research, we know that if you submit an application, same exact application, and you submit it with a man's name, and then you submit the same one as a woman's name or a person of color's name, that other application will be graded more poorly, right? That's what the science tells us. So what we've done is we've stripped all identifying information that we can from the application, and we're only providing the readers with the essay responses. So Holly, your most important part is answering those essays. And you'll find that, for example, there might be in one of the essay questions, it might say something like, you know, talk about growth mindset and how you would apply that at Front Range, at CSU, and your career. Well, that's 4 different things. So make sure that your essay responds to growth mindset at Front Range, growth mindset at CSU, and growth mindset in your career. So be really intentional and thorough in your essay responses. I recommend asking one of your mentors, one of your faculty members, to review the essay questions themselves and your responses so you can make sure that those are top quality.
So I was a reader last year for some of those essays. Yeah, and the students, if they answered the questions, it was great. You know, but some people just talked about something totally irrelevant. And so they got graded very lowly, even though it's interesting sometimes, but just wasn't what they were supposed to talk about. So just make sure you you answer the question. It was amazing how many people didn't. I was disappointed.
Thanks, Vicki. Yeah, that's really good advice. And the nice thing is these essay questions are short, 250 words max for 3 different essay questions. So you've got to be very concise, right? You can't just go on and on and on about, well, when I was 5 and this and that, right? It's just like, you got to get really to the point. So the good news is that you've got a lot of time to get those 3 short essay questions done. So Holly, if you're going to focus on one thing, it's getting the application in on time and making sure your essay questions are top notch.
And I
And you
think
said
that,
about you said
that
like
applies
about,
to everybody. Sorry, Hallie. That applies to everybody. When I applied for my master's, this current master's degree, 2.5 years ago, I actually had my boss read it, and I had another program director in healthcare read my application essay, just to make sure that I answered the question, that I was saying what I thought I was saying. And right, I'm older, not old, older, and have written a lot of them, but I still wanted that input, and it's really important to get it. Sorry, Holly, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Erin, you said that there are about 90 people that have already applied.
Sorry, I misspoke. 90 people have opened an application. That does not mean that they will finish it on time. So I can't tell you. I typically about 30% of open applications are never completed. So if we're choosing 36 students, we have 90 open applications right now. Your chances of getting one of those spots is very high. Now, we'll get more applications as we get closer to the deadline. Typically, in the last 24 hours, we'll see those numbers go way up for some of those procrastinators. I am one of them, I admit. So, there's that. But the most important thing is just those essays and getting it in on time. Sometimes students get wrapped up in the detail. Well, am I this? And well, what about this? And what? Look, if we offer you the internship or the scholarship, and for some reason it's not going to fit with when you wanted to transfer to CSU or whatever, you can always decline it. That's no problem. But why take yourself out of the running of promotions, graduate school, scholarships, internships by not even trying, right? Well, I don't know if it's going to fit with my, so doesn't matter. Do the application and you can figure it out later. That's my best advice.
So then I also have a question. It's kind of a two-parter about that. I have my geology professor offered to write me a letter of recommendation for the scholarship. If he does so, is that going to like bump my chances up of getting the scholarship? Not really.
Unfortunately, there's no way to submit a letter of recommendation.
Okay, because that was my next question is, who do I give it to if so?
So well, there's certainly the CSU scholarship application. It's called the CSUSA. So the like winter, like in January-ish, before you transfer to CSU. So like, let's say you're going to CSU in fall of 21, coming up here in January, you would start your CSU scholarship application. It's one scholarship application, several thousand scholarships within it. But we also at Front Range have a scholarship application, and many of those scholarships require or recommend a letter of recommendation.
Okay.
So let me see if I can just Google it really quick. I'm going to share my screen one more time, and I'll show you both the CSUSA and the Front Range. Nope, better not do it there. There we go. So I almost always just Google it. FRCC scholarships, there we go. You've visited this page many times, it tells me. And I just click on that first one, lots of really good information here. Hopefully there will be some scholarship workshops coming up. Here you can see also Wolves to Rams is here, which we just talked about. Look at all these in here. Those are all Front Range scholarships and information about how to apply. Okay, so there's that. And then let me show you the CSUSA, the CSU scholarship application. So basically you have to be admitted to CSU first. And then once you're admitted to CSU as a transfer student, then you're able to apply for the CSU scholarship application. This CSUSA has, I haven't counted them up, but let me just show you really quick how many scholarships are in it. So this is page 1 of 33 pages.
Oh, wow.
right? And that's for CSU. So this is another good reason why you want to, if you're transferring to CSU in a fall, you want to apply as a transfer student as soon as this fall's grades post, right? So if you're trying to go to CSU next fall, as soon as your grades post this semester, you should apply to CSU. That way you have more time to fill out that CSU scholarship application. A lot of times students will tell you, sometimes advisors will tell you, sometimes faculty will tell you that you don't have to apply to transfer until June. That's wrong.
You don't have to, but it's not a good idea.
Yeah, if you don't like free money, go ahead and apply in June. If you like free money, please apply sooner. That will go across the board, whether it's CSU, CU, UNC, doesn't matter. Apply early. Yeah, Rosalie.
I have a question because I am transferring to CSU, but the thing is that I applied for CSU before I started Front Range and I got accepted, but I deterred my enrollment. Does that still count as am I still eligible for applying for those CSU scholarships?
So when are you planning to start at CSU?
Next fall. So fall of 21.
Yeah, so what you need to do is, how long has it been since you've been admitted to CSU?
I got admitted in July of this year. So.
Okay. So all you need to do is send your updated transcripts in December showing this fall's grades, and then that should reinstate you. Then you'll have to go to orientation, meet with your advisor, register for classes, and then you'll have access to the CSU scholarship application.
Okay, thank you.
Rosalie, I'm going to put contact of who you want to be in contact with in the chat. His name is Paul Santiago. He's a CSU transfer admissions person.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I have one question because I feel like I lost something in between talking about the Front Range Scholarship and the CSU Scholarship. Mm-hmm. If I want this Front Range Scholarship, do I need to be applying to CSU now?
No. So okay. I'm talking about Wolves to Rams. Wolves to Rams is specifically aimed at students who are transferring from Front Range to CSU in STEM. That's when we were talking about that $30,000 scholarship and the $40,000 paid research internship. Mm-hmm. There are also separate from Wolves to Rams additional Front Range scholarships that you should be applying for if you're a Front Range student. But typically the way that the timing works is you will apply for scholarships at Front Range. The deadline is typically March 1 for the next academic year. So if you're not going to be at Front Range next academic year, then you wouldn't be applying for Front Range scholarships. Instead, you would be applying for the school where you're going to. If it's CSU, you'd be applying for transfer admissions first because you can't apply for scholarships until you've been admitted. And then you would fill out the CSU scholarship application. If you have additional questions, I actually do CSU transfer advising. So I'm going to put my appointment scheduler over here in the chat, and we can talk about individual plans. I've met with several of you, but eped.appointee.com. That's it. Any questions about the Wolves to Rams scholarship or paid internship program?
Paid internship. Can I apply for both?
Yes. One application, and there's a box and it says which one you want to do, and you can click one or the other or both.
Okay.
I also have a question about that as well, because I'm not quite sure, because I'm trying to be a biomedical and mechanical engineering major, like a dual major at CSU, but I don't know if there would be like research available for that specific major. Like, would there be? Or...
Yeah, that's the whole point of the program, is connecting you to research in your major. I would never put you in a reptiles lab.
Okay.
No, so we select our students first, and then we work with the CSU faculty to match you with a lab.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions for Erin? Anybody else here? If not, I want to thank our fabulous panelists for being here today. Yes, there you go. Andrea, Vicky, Brandis, and Colleen, thank you so much for your time and sharing your experiences with our students. I think they enjoyed it a lot. And again, all of the information, there's people's email addresses in the chat. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. And I hope you all have a good rest of the day.
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Good luck to you guys.
Thank you, Sarah. Nice
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.
That was so cool.